Hi, I'm Greg Hunter. This is the weekly news wrap-up, the WNW 198 for Friday, July 10th, 2015. And I just want to start with an overview because what's going on is just absolutely crazy. I mean, the Chinese stock market crashing, U.S. stock market crashing, hacking going on, hacking at federal agencies, at the NYSE. Greece is a mess that could take down the entire European Union. Meanwhile, they're passing secret trade deals, and they did that a week or so ago, while they're suing the president, Congress, the Republicans, suing the president in federal court for overreach, and they give him all these powers in a secret deal. What are the powers? Well, it's secret. And, then the president is passing these secret initiatives. And when you take a look at what is going on with, the happenings around the country and the markets and in Greece and in Europe and around the globe, you say to yourself, what is going on? And I say, this is what it looks like when a debt-based currency system gets in trouble and unwinds. That's what it looks like. That's what's going on, really. It's a process, and it's an ugly process. I want to start with the Iran nuclear negotiations going on. They are going poorly. I predicted there would be no deal to curtail Iran's nuclear program. Why? Well, I came up with that prediction after the Obama administration announced this great framework and this great progress. At the same time, the Iranian leadership was saying the Obama administration is a bunch of liars. How do you come back from that? When have you ever heard that? That's just what's going on with the Iranians. And the latest blurb out of the foreign minister bubbled out this week, and he said, never threaten an Iranian. Which tells me behind the scenes, the Kerry administration, are they threatening the Iranians over this deal? Well, that's surely a marker where that it's not going well. The Iranians have said you cannot inspect our military nuclear installations. And when we sign a deal, we want these sanctions lifted. That's totally opposite to what the Obama administration is saying. The best thing John Kerry can come up with is to say, well, we will not be rushed. Secretary of State Kerry, at some point, you got to fish or cut bait. You're not going to be rushed, but you can't be in fantasy land. If this side is dug in and saying they're not going to do this, they're not going to do that, and they want this and that, and you're dug in and you say we're not going to do this, and we want this and that, well, then you're going to come to the realization at some point, and I think it's coming up pretty soon, that there is going to be no deal. And even if the Obama administration, I'm not so sure they will knuckle under to all the concessions Iran wants, Congress is going to kibosh it. There is going to be no deal. When we finally have that realization, the next big two-word question is going to be, now what? That's going to be a big, big question. So far, we're in fantasy land. We're still pretending that we're going to have a deal. And all the data shows we won't. Oh, I'd like to have a deal. Oh, I'd like to have one. I'm just telling you the analysis from what I see and read, there is going to be no deal. The Greeks won another $54 billion. They won 3-year extension of their deal. They're going to cut and add taxes of about $14 billion. They're not going to cut their pensions. And, Tsipras, the prime minister of Greece, says, hey, we got very little of this, 240 or $60 billion in bailout money. Most of it went to the banks. And he's correct. And a Guardian UK story, good source, backs him up on that. Most of the money went to the banks. I mean, imagine a Greece, 11 million people. If they really did get $260 billion over the last 5 years, their economy should be taking off like a rocket. But they're in depression. They got a 25% unemployment rate. And if there is no deal, and I don't think there's going to be, because they met their deadline. Now they got a Sunday. They've got a Sunday deal, a Sunday deadline. And, I just don't see how they can come up with a deal. The Greeks, first and foremost, cannot pay, period. And either can Spain, Italy, Portugal. They can't pay either. But if they give Greek a deal, a debt cut, which Tsipras and the Greeks are demanding because they didn't get the money. They're not going to pay all this money back. The banks got the money. if they don't get a debt cut, or if they do get a debt cut, this is a damned if you do, damned if you don't scenario, well, then everybody else is going to want a debt cut. And then those bonds are going to be worth a lot less. And if those bonds are going to be worth a lot less, whoa, that just puts a bunch of risk in those bonds. Sovereign debt. Oh, yeah, they're risk-free return. Nope, no, they'd be worth less money. And then they'd have to cut the debt of Spain and Italy. And listen, and Portugal is at, Spain's about 100% of debt to GDP. Portugal's about 130. Italy's at 132. And just a little primer on debt to GDP, your gross domestic product and your debt, how much you make, how much you owe. Whoa, when you owe way more than you make, or as much as you make, when it's 100% debt to GDP, bad things happen. Well, in Portugal and Spain, they're at 130 some odd percent. Greece is even worse. They can't pay the money. Now, are the bankers in Germany going to force Greece out of the EU and into a deeper depression to show Spain and Italy and Portugal, you better toe the line? Or is that going to backfire? Or do they cut their date, then everybody else's debt is going to be cut? It comes down to all these countries are insolvent. This is just a fantasy, a game, a charade that they're trying to tell you that, these countries, it could be fixed and they can be solvent when they are insolvent. The bonds are no good. They're worth a lot less than what they're saying they are worth. And then they have all this leverage with these banks on these bonds and all these derivatives. And can you see the situation we're in? Listen, if they cut their debt in Greece, listen, other people are going to want a debt cut. If they don't cut their debt, they can't pay. They're going to leave the euro. Other people can't pay either. They're insolvent. They can't pay. None of the other countries can pay. And that's why there's this big anti-EU, including EU, component politically in the European Union, including France. The leading candidate wants to get out of the EU. They can't pay. They're insolvent. We're fooling ourselves thinking they are somehow insolvent. And it all ends when everybody comes to the realization that, they can't pay and these bonds are no good and these countries are insolvent and they're just going to default on the debt. And it means the bonds are no good. It means the banks are insolvent. That means there's a daisy chain of collapse around the globe, including here in the U.S. We, too, are insolvent. The U.S. It is, Zero Hedge says, listen, here's a chart, and I thought this was very instructive. He said, I got this on Zero Hedge, and this is the euro. And they, whoops, I have that right? Yeah, here we go. There you go. Here is the euro. It's recently, and you can see it. It's on a B line down here. This red line, which is 85 euros to the dollar. It's they say this is a death spiral. This is tanking. This is going down. This is why the EU isn't going to make it, because the euro's not going to make it. And I tell you, if these bonds collapse, and I think they eventually will, the euro will collapse. Now, will this drive everybody into the dollar swimming pool until somebody drops a hairdryer into the dollar swimming pool? I don't know. How long will the dollar hold up if we find out that those bonds are no good and the derivatives around the globe are a daisy chain of collapse? And how long will the U.S. be? Who knows? But we are fooling ourselves into thinking that the world is solvent when indeed it is insolvent. People say, well, they printed all this money. Actually, they printed all these bonds. And then they took the bonds and they leveraged them up, including here in America and China and everywhere else. Speaking of China, the Chinese miracle is pretty much over. In the last 12, 13 months or so, the Chinese stock market is up 130%. Well, in the last 3-4 weeks, it's down almost 30%. This last week, gyrating like crazy, it was down 6%. It was up 6%. This is crazy. Some people say, it's the spy agencies attacking China. I have a friend of mine who teaches economics, has a master's degree in China, and he wrote on the site, no. Everybody in China, according to him, is playing the stock market. Shoeshine boys in the 1920s, and everybody and his brother were playing the market. This is what's happening in China. And they're playing the market. A lot of people in China are playing the market with borrowed money, margin debt. And the economy's slowing down, and it's a huge bubble, and this is what happens when bubbles pop. Boom. People lose money, especially the people who got in late in the game, which most retail investors get in at the end and lose their shirts. This is what my friend says is going on in China. It is not the spy agencies. It is just deleveraging and what happens when a bubble pops. And incidentally, for anybody who thinks that the Federal Reserve is not worried about what is going on in the world, there's a month ago in their last meeting, what are they looking at? Oh, Fed worried about Greece. You hear all this talk about them raising rates. Well, no, they're worried about Greece causing a problem around the world. They didn't quite say it that way, but they're worried. It was in the minutes last month at the Federal Reserve. They're worried about the goings on in Greece, and it's coming to a head, this week. Can they cut another deal? I don't know, but they've given them a hard deadline. Supposedly, they give them a really hard deadline. The U.S. stock exchange also gyrating around like crazy. And then we find out about all this hacking in federal agencies, and we find out that there was a glitch at the NYSE. The same day there was a glitch at the Wall Street Journal and a glitch at United Airlines. And a lot of people find that very bizarre. Was that hacking? Was that an attack? Was that anonymous? I do have some sources that say that, really, it might be the spy agencies doing a dry run, seeing how things will react. NYSE, United Airlines, a media outlet, a travel outlet, airline, and then a financial system, like the NYSE. They're just doing a test run. I don't know if that's true or not. I have no idea. But this is more than a coincidence that these three entities all had glitches that were just about catastrophic and shut them down for hours. That, to me, sounds bizarre. But again, this is what it looks like when a debt-based system comes to an end. Here's another bizarre occurrence that happened. Silver. Here it hits a near-term low. It's around $15 an ounce. And all of a sudden, the U.S. Mint says, whoop, that's it, we're out of silver. Well, let me get this straight now. The price is going down, but sales are going through the roof, and you're going to stop selling silver? They're done. They're out of silver. They may start up in August or September, but they're done, according to the Mint. Isn't that bizarre? Well, if the price is dropping, wouldn't people be selling it, sell? But instead, big hands are buying it, evidently. They're buying it so much that the Mint is out and have suspended sales. That's like a taco stand saying, wow, we're selling tacos like crazy, and your partner looking at you and saying, yeah, let's stop selling tacos. Another bizarre occurrence. The other thing I wanted to bring up is, in the so-called recovery, there is no recovery, is Microsoft. Now, this is not a small company, and they've already laid off 18,000. And here's another round of layoffs, 7,800 jobs, and these are not $7 an hour jobs. These are not minimum wage jobs. These are jobs with benefits and matching 401k, dental, vision, you name it, and good salaries. 7,800 jobs at Microsoft, and that's a recovery? I don't think so. Just another little marker on the recovery. I got to give you my latest bank thing. I'm reading the paper. I think, here's another one. Here's another one. This is an AP story in the local paper. Chase Bank to pay $136 million for unlawful collections. Here they're raking their credit card holders over the coals and doing all these illegal things to them, and they have to pay $136 million for unlawful collections. They broke the law, and they have to pay just a fine. Shareholders actually pay this fine. And nobody goes to jail. Yet another story about bankers committing crime, and they just pay a fine. The shareholders pay a fine. If I was a shareholder of J.P. Morgan, sell. I mean, the officers of the bank ought to be paying those fines. They ought to be indicted and arrested. But again, I've named so many different scenarios, so many different happenings where you caught us, we'll pay a fine. Shareholders will pay a fine, and they'll move on. Finally, Hillary Clinton. Roped off reporters this week, and I wasn't going to cover this until I saw the CNN interview where she said, I didn't get a subpoena for the Benghazi investigation. What? The next day, Trey Gowdy, who's chairing that committee in Congress, says, yeah, she got a subpoena. Now, unless Hillary Clinton has dementia or Alzheimer's or some cognitive difficulties, that to me sounds a bare, bold-faced lie. I didn't get a subpoena. The next day, Trey Gowdy says, yeah, you did. What? Why isn't the press all over her for that kind of a lie? And then she tells the press, I did nothing wrong. Well, that's not what the law says. The law says, yeah, you did. But, one thing's for sure. Her saying she did not get a subpoena for this Benghazi investigation where 4 Americans were murdered and she was the head of the State Department at the time and didn't do what she needed to do to protect these people, that's a fact. And she says she didn't get a subpoena? I mean, she wants to be president of the United States, and people, what's scary is people may elect her to be president of the United States. I'm not against a woman being president. I just don't want that woman to be president. There are plenty of other good women, both Democrat and Republican, that could be president that aren't liars. I mean, that is brazen. I didn't get a subpoena. Next day, yeah, you did. So evidently she's not coming to Congress. I don't know how that's going to work out. I'm Greg Hunter. That's the way I see it. Thank you very much for supporting USA Watchdog with your comments and your donations. That helps us out. Remember, fear not. Prepare yourself mentally, physically, and above all, spiritually. Fear not.